It feels like that, I'm not gonna lie. It's been marathon meetings every day for the most part.
All right, it's 8 o'clock. I know there's a lot of other committees meeting here today. I hate this room because of that post right there. Y'all can't see me and I can't see y'all. Are any of the three authors here? Oh, Misha. Okay. Well, we're going to start with Misha then. Okay. Misha, come on up. You get to go first since you're here. They say showing up is 80% of success. All right, this is a new room for me. Podium mic. All right, tell us what you got.
Okay, thank you for having me, Chair. This is House Bill 282, LC 491104. And this bill was brought by the Department of Education last year, and we are doing it again this year. Last year it passed out of the Education Committee because this really is a K through 12 issue, but it is about workforce development. And so this year with the governor pushing workforce development, we thought it to be more appropriate to come through industry and labor. The Employability Skills Task Force has created 3 overarching recommendations and 8 goals. For each of the goals, and the group also drafted implementation strategies for key stakeholders. This bill helps to integrate employability skills into curriculum and learning experiences from pre-K to post-secondary education. It also aims to engage school systems in developing plans and strategies for integrating employability skills for all students into instruction across all disciplines. And I do believe we have some other people that may be testifying for this as well. It supports educators and other stakeholders in developing employability skills. It develops deeper and stronger relationships between the industry and school systems. And with the expansion of the employability skills, which is what this bill is about, it aims to create meaningful career readiness experience, including work-based learning and educator externships. It is a high school graduate with employability skills. They are most likely to get a job sooner. They'll have academic and technical skills. They communicate more effectively. They're able to solve problems, collaborate purposely, and act also responsibly. And the Georgia Chamber of Commerce also gave everyone a letter of endorsement because of the collaboration between K through 12 and the business community. And I'd like to, if there are other people here to speak, I'd like them to come up to speak.
While we got a light flashing, let's see if you got a question here. Representative Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Misha, I certainly appreciate the intent of the bill. I did have a few questions. One, in just reviewing this bill, and certainly, I come from Gwinnett County, one of the largest school districts in the state. 1 in 10 students go to a Gwinnett County public school. My understanding is that for the most part, they already do everything that's already in this bill. And so can you help me better understand what this bill would require, which isn't already being done?
So out of all of the school systems, Gwinnett may be fortunate enough to be doing this workforce ready programming, but all school systems throughout the state of Georgia are not currently doing the program.
Can you provide some specifics as to which school systems are not doing this? And if I may, you mentioned that this came from the Department of Education. Is this an agency bill that they're asking you to carry, or is there a representative from the Department of Education who could speak to this bill and ensure that they're able to implement the requirements that you're saying are not there, that would otherwise need to be implemented by July 1st of this year?
It is a department bill. This was created from the Department of Education, and so someone is here to speak.
I look forward to hearing from them.
Thank you.
Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and also thank you, Representative, for bringing this bill. I think it's something that we do need to have. I guess my only concern is that never been a person of unfunded mandate or anything like that, but on line 34, you said the Department of Education is directed, and then on line 36, you say the Department of Education shall, and then on line 40, you say the subsection shall be ready for implementation on July 1, 2023. I'm just trying to, those words to me, it didn't say may, so that'll mean that everybody is obligated to do this, and my only concern is if they don't have the whereabouts or the finance to do this, how they're gonna do this.
So let's start with 34. The
Okay.
Department of Education is directed. So the Department of Education already has everything they need for this program. It's currently in place and set up. No funding is required. And so it's directed because this is what they're doing. This is what has already, this program has already been implemented within the Department of Education. So that's why it says directed. They're doing it already. And what was the other number?
36, where you say Department of Education shall make such,
So right now, all school systems are not doing it. So now school systems like Gwinnett County, they can collaborate more effectively with the DOE, and it's not mandated that the school system has to do it, but DOE shall provide these curriculum platforms for each school system.
so you don't think may, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, you don't think may would have been a better word than shall? I mean, that's just me asking.
We can talk about it in the committee. If the committee feels like may is a better word than shall, I'm open to that friendly amendment.
And then 40, you said the shall be ready by implementation no later than July 1st, 2023. And we're talking, Chairman, I'm just going off, I guess it's early in the morning. Thank you. 2023, so we're talking about March, so we're talking about April, May, June, so within the next 4 months?
So July 1 is when all bills become effective, and they already have everything in place. So this is not a burden to the Department of Education. This is the date that they asked for. So it can readily be available for the fall.
Thank you. I mean,
All right, we got a lit up board here. Representative Bonner, or is that, who's 17? I'm sorry. Is that Representative Mandisha Thomas?
I'll be Bonner. Good morning, Representative Maynor.
Good morning.
Thank you for bringing this bill. I service Fulton, Douglas, and Coweta County, and I've talked to some of the school board members about this bill. In particularly Fulton County, they said that the career readiness is in place, but it's more towards the high school. And this bill is 6 through 12, right?
Correct, it does expand it.
So this would be expanding in Fulton County, and I think they'd be pleased with it based on the comments that I've got back about the bill.
Thank you so much, Representative.
Thank you.
Wait, before, Representative Carter? Is that you? Okay. Morning.
Thank you. My apologies for a few minutes getting here. Good morning.
Good morning.
So my question is, if this is already in place, how many districts currently are not implementing it, and what is the motivation to codify it versus allowing the DOE to, whatever that word was?
We have a workforce
Right.
problem in the state. And so codifying it will, one, help with our workforce needs throughout the state of Georgia. And the other, what was the second question?
Well, going back to the first question, because you were saying Representative McLean was concerned about the date, but you were saying that they already have these items in place or the material in the curriculums. If they're already in place, I'm just trying to understand why isn't it being, I guess, used in the various districts, or is there a large number that isn't? I'm trying to just understand the justification for codifying something that the DOE already has.
Okay, so the Develop Train the Trainer course within CTA ERN has over 120 participants from only 29 school districts. The DOE has created resources highlighting elementary ag and CTSO best practices. They also work with the Atlanta Electrical Contractors Association, work-based leasing coordinators, CTAE directors, and counselors to focus on employability skills. Right now, they have funds in one place within the DOE. If they are allowed to expand this throughout the state of Georgia, they can access those funds that they already have in order to implement it to everybody versus those that just opt in.
May I?
But I would like the DOE to answer those specific questions.
Okay, because I mean, of course, I absolutely support this, and a very, and I know that we have to do different. I just was trying to understand. So, is it a communication, or is it resources in various districts that the reason why they're currently not implementing these programs at the level in which they're going to on July 1st? And what's going to be different? But like, the resources is there now.
Yes.
And but on July 1st, it's going to be law. So is the thought that now this law, the districts are going to participate?
The July 1st date allows it to be implemented immediately with the fall program as schools are getting ready over the summer for the fall.
Okay.
As far as their logistics on how they're going to implement it, I think that would be best for the DOE to talk about their rollout.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to do one more question, then we're going to get the department up here. Representative Park, Leader Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to clarify, the Department of Education already has this program in place, and it's making, and I'm assuming is allowing or providing this information to all the public schools and local school systems in the state already, correct? But this bill would not in any way make it mandatory for local school systems to implement this program. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's not mandatory for a local system to do this.
So I think I'm just having a little bit of difficulty in understanding the purpose of the bill, just because it seems somewhat redundant. And my understanding and hearing from Gwinnett County Public Schools, again, the largest school system in the state, I think there is concern that I've heard about this bill. One, in terms of whether the bill is needed, since this information is already provided from the Department of Education to Gwinnett County school systems. It's optional as to whether their school systems implement the bill, and to ensure that it's a curriculum that's designed by boards of education, particularly for K through 12, sixth grade to 12th grade. Even though, of course, workforce development is important, we still want to ensure, especially coming from the largest school system, that, the focus is on education.
I
Okay.
really do hate
But
that.
let me interrupt because I think we've kind of touched on all three of those areas. Let's get Ashley up here because we do have two of the bills.
And if I could just
Yeah,
respond.
go ahead.
I do hate that the Gwinnett County lobbyist did not contact me because we could have spoke about this prior to today. So for the record, Gwinnett County school system did not contact me saying that they were in disagreement with the bill, nor did you until right now. And text you last night to let you know about the bill. So I'm sorry that there was miscommunication there.
Okay. Is Ashley the one that's coming? Or who's from the department going to come talk?
I'm going to call up Deanna Harris from Capital
Indiana. Okay. Sorry.
Strategy. She represents DOE.
So Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do apologize. Our Department of Education representative, Dr. Barbara Wall, was prepared to speak yesterday where we were supposed to have committee at 3 o'clock. And unfortunately, due to she had other appointments today, she wasn't able to come in to answer some of the more detailed questions.
Tell us who you are first.
I'm Deanna Harris with Southern Capital Strategies. So I work on behalf of Educators First, which is a teachers association, and also work hand in hand with Dr. Wall for the CTAE program. And like Representative Maynard spoke before, we brought this legislation forward last year. It did pass out of education. We just didn't really get across the finish line prior to crossover, and really hoping to be able to implement this year. The research has been done. The need is there. Like she said, it's in 29 of the 180 school districts. Most school districts always have the option not to implement a program, but with the issues of workforce development and with the expansion of more high schools doing programs where we're involving our electricians and our different labor development groups and unions, we believe that implementing these soft skill sets into the curriculums will really play a vital role in kind of moving people in different directions throughout our workforce development issues.
Leader Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to clarify, you're not speaking on behalf of the Georgia Department of Education?
Not today, no.
Okay. My understanding,
But I have worked with them to put this together.
But my understanding is generally that the Department of Education is not permitted to hire lobbyists. Is that correct?
I'm not their lobbyist.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just because this requires the Department of Education to take action, if I could be so inclined to make a motion to table this bill until we hear from the Department of Education, I would like to make that motion.
All right, not recognize that for right now. Gonna do something a little odd. We got two people needing to go to Judy non-civil. We're gonna put this on pause. Deborah Silcox, come up, because I know
Thank
you're
you.
trying to get bills out of both committees.
So I bring y'all this morning House Bill 501. And this bill was brought to me actually by some constituents whose children want to work at the concession stand in Chastain Park. And I have letters from them if we have time to get to that. But I really wanted to just go ahead and go over the bill. I want to thank Representative Schofield. Section 1 of the bill is her bill that we have combined into House Bill 501. And Section 1 really just addresses the only change. If you look on page 2 of the bill, it just says that instead of not allowing discrimination between the ages of 40 and 70, that it will be 40 years and older. In other words, there would be no age discrimination for anyone 40 years and older in the state of Georgia. So I think this is a vast improvement. I know a lot of retirees are coming back into the workforce and working again, or reconsidering working again with the economy the way it's been the last couple of years. So I think this is a great addition. And again, I appreciate Representative Schofield, her contribution to this bill tremendously. Section 2, if you go to line 47 and following, it basically just says that a minor 14 years of age or older can be employed during vacation from school, and they can maintain lawns, gardens, shrubbery, and they can, as long as they're covered by an accident and sickness insurance plan or workers' compensation plan provided by the employer, and of course maintain those lawns, garden, and shrubbery. They can also work at a mill in Section B on the grounds of that, but not in the mill itself, of course. And then the second part, of course, of that section, going down to lines 70 through 73, really the relevant part there is just to say that they no longer have to be issued a work permit.
And isn't that the biggest part, that they can work anyway? They're just
Correct.
You just have to
correct.
ask for that piece of paper. And as
Right.
far as I know,
Right.
no one's been denied that. It's almost like they're going to get that piece of paper.
Yes, and I
So-
want to thank Sean Rhee and Legislative Council. She worked with the Department of Labor to make sure that this was cleared with them, so they are good with this. And again, I think this is great because these young people that want to work, if they're out of school in the summer and they can't get this certificate from from their teacher that they needed previously, they can still take that summer job and earn some money for spending money, like I had to do.
Okay. I think these are in order. Representative Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I appreciate Section 1 of the bill, certainly, and I appreciate you recognizing the work of Representative Schofield.
Of course.
I think for the rest of the bill, I understand the intent. I think I'm just a little concerned about child labor laws, particularly when it comes to eliminating the need for certificates and the verification that there isn't any violations occurring either of state or federal law. Could you just speak to some of the potential concerns that may arise when it comes to any violation of state or federal child labor laws?
Well, and if this wasn't just for summer jobs, as it says only on vacation, and it wasn't already cleared by the Department of Labor, I would be more concerned. But the fact that they have cleared this, I think, it is an indication certainly that this wouldn't be a violation of other laws.
Mr. Chairman, one more follow-up.
Yep.
So the first part would be applicable just to during the summer, but the second part, lines 62 to 73, that would eliminate the certificate for any minors for any employment.
It's 14 and older.
Okay.
It is 14 and older. So
Okay.
this really is kind of applying to that sophomore through senior high school window. So these are not third graders or fourth graders.
But that would apply year round.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Mhm.
Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess, the child labor law was something I thought too about Chairman Silcox, but I guess on line 51, when it said operation of equipment, I mean, I just get concerned when I see a 14-year-old around equipment, line equipment, or, I've seen adults get their feet cut off, and they wasn't children. So I'm just concerned about equipment. Did you specify what type of equipment we're talking about, or is that just all line equipment?
Yeah, I didn't. I think that's a legitimate question, certainly. I would hope that, they would wear tennis shoes and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that's a legitimate question. Absolutely.
Representative Thomas.
Thank you for bringing this bill, Representative, and thank you for the work that you and Representative Schofield did on the bill. And I'm in agreement of the bill. I really would have liked it to see it at age 13, which is the Internal Revenue Service codes for youth in business with investment income and formation of a business. They go up to age 13. But I am in agreement with this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chairman Bonner.
Hey, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just a question on I think it's line 49, where it talks about during months of vacation from school. Who's going to determine that in terms of understand a traditional, say, public school that has a traditional calendar with summer months and breaks programmed throughout, but what about, for instance, like a homeschool family?
Oh, I think certainly they, if they're on a different schedule, again, this does apply year round. But I think the intent was for the majority of students, but this is not to exclude homeschool students at all.
So then the kind of what constitutes a vacation or a time off from school is
I think that for homeschool, that's defined by the parents.
Right. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Good point. Before another light flashes up, have you got anybody to speak to this?
I don't. I
Okay,
had some
and that's
young people
fine.
that were going to come, but this was.
I know,
not
and
in
I'm
their
sorry
schedule.
about that. But it's that time of year. Will of the committee, Chairman Bonner.
I move do pass.
Thank you.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Okay, motion carries. And I meant to bring some, get the rules forms and let's get that taken care of on the floor.
I will.
At least for my signature.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is Tyler Paul, did he make it in here? Okay. Okay. Deanna, come back up. No, oh, is that him? Okay. Okay, imposter. Okay, Deanna.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Thank
Hey,
you.
so, I guess there's some concern of, but if it was last year, that since a Department of Education person is not here, just trying to qualify that this is an agency requested bill.
That's correct. So unfortunately that we got suddenly rescheduled yesterday. Everybody was kind of lined up for yesterday, and Dr. Barbara Wall, who is the director of CTAE, did have a medical appointment today. So that's why she was prepared for yesterday as agreed upon. I have tried to reach out to their policy director, Tiffany Taylor, and also Carrie Pritchard. I believe they are also both in other meetings currently. Last year, Matt Cardoza testified on the bill, and I also believe that our state school superintendent as well showed his support for the bill to be able to move forward for that program.
Okay. Did you have anybody else that was going to speak to the bill?
Let me also just add, right now the program does not have a soft skills component. And so this adds a soft skills component to the workforce development curriculum within the program that's already available.
Okay, and one of the issues before I signed on to this bill, I asked you, and I think it took care of the concern that Representative McLean had. I thought this was already a may, even if we implement this bill, this is not going to require every school system to do this.
Correct.
Correct, okay.
And so I guess just to, this is a workforce development bill. We have a workforce shortage within the state of Georgia. Schools have the ability to implement these programs. Some school systems are, some school systems are not. One of the things that's not in the current workforce development programs is soft skills, which is professionalism, readiness, and interviewing skills of those sorts. And so this expands that. The reason it's not a cost for the DOE is because they already have the resources in place to expand it to the soft skills.
Okay,
And Tiffany Taylor with the DOE, she has a conflict because of the
Gotcha.
rescheduling. And like she said, Dr. Wall, the director of CTAE, has a medical appointment, and they were prepared to present in front of you.
gotcha. Chairman Bonner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just understand that there is a motion that's been put out to table. I just want to kind of go on record that I'll oppose that, and I will subsequently make a motion to pass. I think we could certainly take the representative's word for it that this is a department bill requested by them, and I think the bill certainly has merit. And given the time frame we're on, with Monday being crossover, that this bill is something that deserves to move forward.
Okay, so let's take up those two measures. I'm going to allow Park to make his motion, and y'all can vote accordingly. Representative Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion to table House Bill 282, LC 491104.
Is there a second? Okay. All in favor of tabling the bill? Yep, hold on, discussion, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there another Industry and Labor Committee meeting being
No.
held before? Okay, thank you.
No, so we would need to do that. All right, any other discussion? Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back to where I was about the shall and the may, so that
Tell me what line you're on.
40, I'm on lines 36 and lines 40.
Okay, but again, that's just
Now,
allowing the
40 is-
resources. That's not, which they already have. So I would not be interested in an amendment on that. Since the overall bill is a may, not a shall. Because that's just saying that they, if the schools want to do it, they're going to make the resources available. So that would be kind of counterproductive if a school wanted to do it and we're telling the department, well, they can or cannot. So I think that language I'm good with.
Tiffany Taylor, if I may, she said that she's willing to meet with any representative later today to go over
Okay.
their concerns.
All right. Representative Carter.
Okay, the motion on the table is to table the bill, and mainly because we really do have some questions that need to be answered. I'm over here wondering, why is this bill in industry and labor if it was in education last year?
She addressed
But we'll
that.
table that. Well,
Yeah.
like I said, I got here a little late, so I missed that. But I really don't understand, and even after you just commented on the bill, why we're codifying this if it's not something that's going to be mandatory and it's something that each school can do now. So if you could just answer that question, because I'm all about making sure we get people to work. I'm a strong education advocate, but I don't want to vote on a bill with all these questions, and we're gonna push a bill because we had time constraints. And we were all ready yesterday for the most part. So
Well, you have talked to the speaker about our
I'm
scheduling
saying, but
conflict.
I think we should have those questions answered instead of just pushing a bill that may not necessarily is not going to do anything if you pass the bill or not. And that's the question that you guys just haven't answered for me.
So,
Okay.
Representative Carter, the difference is that the bill will make so right now, implementing the soft skills and the courses is electable. Like, they have to go to the Department of Education to say, hey, we want to implement this in our school. With creating the legislation, this kind of spreads it throughout the all 180 districts, which right now we're at only 29. Now they have the option to waive to have to do it. So versus it being electable, like where I go and ask for it, the bill creates it where I can decline if we don't want to implement it in our district.
Okay. Okay. Representative Holly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing the bill. I understand that right now it's tough to be able to try to provide a lot of the soft skills training that's necessary. I know for those of us who, certainly are of age, remember in Georgia where it was a partnership from the Department of Labor with the Department of Education to provide jobs for Georgia graduates, which did teach kind of those soft skills as well as, kind of the more robust trainings in terms of actually how to go about searching for employers, making a good presentation, doing a lot more. I was sad to see much of the funding for that being cut, because I know that Nidra Wakefield, who is the administrator over of Jobs for Georgia Graduates, particularly was interested in having that spread to counties that are seeing a lot of those corporations coming in and wanting to be able to have access to the local population to get into those jobs. But when they don't have the required skill sets, then now that puts our own residents at a disadvantage, where we know those corporations are oftentimes having to fly talent away from other states into Georgia to take those jobs. So I just wanted to say that, I understand that not all districts will like this, but hopefully those will be able to see that we serve our students a lot better to actually kind of put forth a measure that is going to help students be able to understand how to get those jobs and be able to hold on to those jobs. So just wanted to commend you.
Thank you, Representative.
Okay. So the motion is to table. There's been a second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Okay. Let's do a hand count. All those in favor of tabling, raise your hand. 4, 5. All those opposed? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that motion is defeated. We're going to take up, we have a first and a second on Chairman Bonner's motion to pass the bill out. Is there discussion on that? Go ahead, Representative Kennard.
Mr. Chairman, when it's appropriate, I would like to make a motion to amend all of the shall language to may.
You're not recognized for that. I think we discussed that, and I was not willing to sign up. Well, I've addressed that previously. Representative Kennard. I'm sorry, McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I guess I just received something from the school system says it just compels Georgia DOE to provide resources. Not sure legislation is needed to achieve that. I mean, and the reason I read it was because they just sent it to me, and my only concern is that what we've already all said about it being redundant. And I really do want to hear from Georgia DOE to say, yes, you know, why we haven't done it, and that's
Okay.
That's just me, you know.
I understand, and I think both those have already been addressed. You can reflect that in your vote. Last one before we vote, Representative Mandisha.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you, Representative Maynard, please list the individuals that were in support of this bill last session, just for clarity?
So CTAE, Mr. Cardoza came, spoke in support of the bill. He actually laid out all of how it will be implemented, why it was necessary, why DOE was not able to implement it the way they needed to without the codification. This year, that same person has now been replaced by Tiffany Taylor. So she was going to present yesterday everything that Mr. Cardoza presented last year. She has another appointment. But Tiffany Taylor has said that she will be available to each and every legislator that has concerns about how the DOE plans to implement it and how it does need to be codified. Also, we have, who am I missing? Oh, Dr. Wall. She's the director of the CTAE program, and she had surgery this morning, and that's why she was not able to be here.
One more follow-up question,
Go ahead.
Chairman. Was the state superintendent in favor of this bill last session?
Yes, in fact, he wrote a letter of support for it.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're going to call the question, and we'll just skip straight to the hand vote. All those in favor of the measure, raise your hand. All those opposed? All right, motion carries. You're on the rules. Again, if you don't have a rules form, go by and get that and see me on the floor so we can get those signatures taken care of. And just for clarification, House Bill 282 LC 491104.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And committee.
Just in time. Well, I tell you what. Chairman Smith has one of the most toughest chairs. I listen to some of his committees when I can't go to sleep. Don't envy him. Tell us what you got.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I appreciate y'all's patience. I know I've worn on it. Some chairman had scheduled his own committee at the same time. I bring to you this morning House Bill 556, working off of LC number 365494. And so this is what we affectionately refer to, and as you can see in the preamble there, the Pregnancy Protection Act. And this act will ensure that pregnant workers are able to maintain employment and will provide clear expectation for employers and will boost Georgia's economy. You may ask, why do we need this? Georgia currently has no laws protecting our pregnant ladies, and federal law falls short. Georgia is ranked second to last in worker protections and is considered one of the worst places to work because Georgia is one of only a few states with no statutory workplace protections for non-government workers. Federal discrimination laws do not work because when workers are forced into federal court, judges dismiss over 90% of those cases. This leaves pregnant Georgia workers with no protections during their pregnancy to maintain employment. Just to kind of breeze through this quickly because I know we're running out of time. PPA benefits workers because it promotes healthier pregnancies and babies. In Georgia, 11.4% of babies are born preterm. Accommodating our pregnant workers is critical for reducing these poor health outcomes. We all know, we've seen in the news the mortality rate, the infant mortality rates as well. Those are many times attributed to healthy pregnancies. So PPA benefits our state. The statistics show that we could add 9% to our state GDP by 2025 through policies that help increase the number of working women in the state, with Georgia currently ranking 30th for female labor force participation. What you see a lot of, and I've experienced it in my generation, I know I'm young, but I've seen many of my colleagues, classmates from school, that they have to pick between a career and having children. And just to really go into, you may ask, why of all people am I carrying this legislation? I don't share this. I don't know that I've ever shared it on the record. I've shared it with close friends, but when I was born, my mother lost her job because she had me. The, I guess, gratification that she always took in it, though, it took 5 people to replace her and doing all the jobs that she did. And so for me, this is very near and dear to my heart. Things worked out. Thankfully, we had the financial assets, and my father, employed at Lockheed Martin, was able to provide for the family during that period. But we as Republicans and Democrats, we both have a concern for the humanity in our society. We have a concern for those mothers on both sides. I think it's time we as policymakers stand behind all of our campaign posturing and promises. I think that this will help us with what we see as a declining birth rate in this state and in this nation, especially for GOPers, and I'm talking to both sides here, but just talking to my side for a little bit. The tax burden is going to go up if we ain't having any more folks born. That's just simple economics. Just to boil this down, if you want to look at it brass tacks with the numbers, we got to have more people, in addition to this being the right thing to do. So I won't belabor or ramble on, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate y'all's diligence. I tell you, I don't know how James Bond runs in a suit. He does it a lot better than what I just did it. So I'll yield for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
It sounds like my afternoon yesterday. Leader Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Smith, I just wanted to thank you for the bill. It clearly addresses a need in the state, and it addresses multiple issues, from maternal and infant mortality to fairness for workers, to addressing workforce labor shortages, to ensuring that we're able to continue to grow our state, which all these issues certainly being bipartisan. Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I would like to make a motion to pass.
Okay. We had a lit up front, and this. Oh yeah, and we got a couple people who want to speak. So let's hear from Representative Thomas first.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for bringing this bill. I'm in full support of it. The only thing I had was the employer shall have the burden of proving a hardship, lines 70 through 77, but this bill actually outlines what those hardships are. And sometimes in our legislation, we'll have a statement but not have the actual criteria, and you do have the criteria, so thank you.
That's the difference in having a lawyer during bill and not a Sarah Hunt Blackwell, come talk to us.
And just so you know, I had a lot of help on that. I took employment law in law school, but that was the extent of it.
Introduce yourself and
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Hunt Blackwell, and I'm the First Amendment policy advocate with the American Civil Liberties Union of Georgia. The ACLU of Georgia protects and defends Georgian civil liberties and civil rights. This morning, I thank Chairman Smith and proudly testify in support of House Bill 556, the Pregnancy Protection Act. The state of Georgia has the second highest maternal mortality rate and one of the highest infant mortality rates in the country. By requiring fair, reasonable pregnancy accommodations in the workplace, HB 556 is one advancing step toward ensuring healthy pregnancies for childbearing Georgians. The need to financially support oneself does not disappear upon becoming pregnant. This means that many pregnant women must work through their pregnancy and more are expected to show up in the same capacity, do the same work, and fulfill the same expectations while pregnant, despite having drastically different needs and abilities. These changes should not be a pink slip for pregnant women, especially those who do not have other financial means to support themselves and their families. We must remember that even in 2023, access isn't equal, and the impacts of pregnancy weigh heavier on some than others. Some pregnant women are fortunate enough to receive paid parental leave or have external financial support that allows them to take unpaid time off from work. Other pregnant women see wonderful obstetricians who write notes to employers explaining the needs that the person may have while continuing to work during pregnancy. Many pregnant women are on their own, barely making ends meet and working so-called good jobs that don't offer pregnancy accommodations. HB 556, like the 35 other pieces of pregnancy protection legislation that have passed across the U.S., makes access more equitable and promotes economic stability for women. There's a lot of talk these days in the Georgia legislature and beyond about protecting children. HB 556 is part of the economic, physical, and emotional protection that pregnant women need to have safe and protected children. Thank you, and I yield to the committee for questions.
you have a couple. Chairman Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you had a couple of questions. You'd mentioned the mortality rate. Explain to me how this bill would impact that.
Certainly. Thank you for your question. Maternal mortality rates are affected by a number of factors, and having supportive workplace environments is one of those factors. Pregnant women have a lot of different needs as they're still working. As the text of the bill says, that could include something as simple as having a chair so that they're not standing on their feet for an entire shift, or being able to go to an appointment and not have that count towards the attendance policy for the workplace. And all of these things are needed for a safe pregnancy and do affect the mortality rate and the healthy pregnancy of the mother.
And then a follow-up question. So can you quantify exactly where this is, what employers are not making accommodations, and give me any numbers or figures of what's happening now? Because as an employer myself, I make accommodations all the time for all of my employees, whether they're pregnant, whether they've had surgeries, whether they have family issues, whatever, because my business can't exist without those employees, right? And so I make those accommodations because those are employees that further my business. So I need to kind of understand more why we, as the government, should be mandating this to the degree that we are in this, because what's in the bill, in my opinion, would make it very difficult for me to do business when I'm already making these accommodations. But what is spelled out in here is really, I think, over-regulation.
And we'll let the chairman come up and answer that, because that's probably a better question for him. Although you can weigh in if you want.
I will briefly, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. I will say, obviously, we all know that private employers can, you know, make their own rules for the operation of their company. And by having this legislation that applies to all employers, we have some baseline, bare bones protections for pregnant people. And ultimately, like you said, without your employees, your business is not going to run. So having this legislation creates a baseline to protect pregnant workers and ultimately make it so that you continue to have employees at your business.
And then about where is this happening, where is this not happening? Can you quantify?
I cannot. That's a great question, and I'm happy to do some research and send you those numbers if there's not anyone else that can answer that question. But again, I don't even know if there are numbers for that, and if that is something that is if there's data on that, because again, private employers can do what they want or not do what they don't want, and so I'm not even sure if private employers have any reporting requirements for, you know, what the accommodations are that they already provide.
Well, and again, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up to that, I mean, I do think it's a bit of a challenge to consider a piece of legislation that addresses something that we can't even quantify.
Thank you.
Did you want to say anything to that, Chairman Smith?
I'll just say, I appreciate you, Representative Bonner. You're one of the good people that does that for their workers. This is not in response to the folks that do a good job of taking care of their people. I think with your military background and you as a bird colonel, you lead from the front and you take care of your people. Nobody else eats until after you don't eat until everybody else is eating. And so your leadership is commendable, and we wish that everybody else was like you. Had an old football coach said, you know, but if wishes were ponies, we'd all take a ride. And so this is really, it is a pretty strict measure, but it's really one of the only side effects of capitalism. I'm a capitalist, always have been. I believe in free markets. I've been really aggravated with what's went on in some of the previous administrations with free trade. But we can't continue to keep ignoring a problem like this. And I take your point. I'm usually for less regulation. I can't stand regulation. But at the same time, we've got to take care of our mothers. We've got to make sure that they have a healthy lead up to delivering their child, because that directly affects their health care as a whole.
Okay. Leader Park. Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Kennard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Smith. I love the bill. I'm going to support it, see the need for it. The previous speaker listed a chair and maybe needing to go to appointments and needing the time to do that. Are there any obvious pregnancy accommodations that you could explain what those may be?
So I've got one of my great lawyers who helped us draft this. If I'm allowed to phone a friend.
Yeah, you need to come up because everything's being recorded.
Thank you, Chairman, and members of the committee for the opportunity to submit this testimony. My name is Amanda Farahani. I'm the managing partner of Baird and Farahani. We represent employees in civil rights cases for discrimination and harassment, and I spend much of my time working on behalf of the women of Georgia. I want to thank Chairman Smith and the many members of the House who have committed to making Georgia safer for pregnant workers with this bill. A 2022 study showed that 1 in 5 individuals have experienced pregnancy discrimination in the workplace, and that 1 in 4 childbearing workers have considered leaving their jobs due to the lack of reasonable accommodations or fear of discrimination during a pregnancy. I think that answers your question, Representative Bonner, and I can add to that in my practice, we've counted over the last year that we've had in each month over 50 pregnant workers call about problems that we've not been able to help them with. And the reason because of that is because federal law, and Georgia has no protections for workers, and federal law does not protect workers. And the reason why is because the federal courts are dismissing more than 90% of these cases at summary judgment. I want to give you examples of just 3 cases that were dismissed so that you can see the gravity of what's happening. In one case, an employer said that he didn't think it would be a good idea to hire a woman who was going to have a baby and then ask the worker whether she had plans to start a family. When she was fired, the federal court said that those statements were not evidence of discrimination and dismissed her case. In another case, a pregnant worker was fired when her baby was born prematurely. The employer told her that because she would need additional time off to recover for her C-section, that she was being terminated. The federal court dismissed that case. In one of our cases that we handled just this year, the prior district attorney told our client, his chief of staff, that when he learned she was pregnant, that her pregnancy was a threat, he proceeded to remove all of her duties, excluded her from all of the meetings, and then demanded her resignation 2 weeks later. There had never been any performance deficiencies or any other unprofessional behavior. And the federal court said, though, even she was probably discriminated against, that the law didn't cover those types of employees. There's a multitude more like this where women each day are being terminated or not being hired because of their pregnancy and being forced to find other ways to have their children, many without health insurance. Passing the PPA would change that and is a step forward for the Georgia workforce. It provides both protections for employees, but it provides protections for employers as well by defining what is and is not improper in the workplace, by providing an exception when it's an undue hardship, and by ensuring that companies who are doing the right thing are able to compete in a place where companies are not doing the right thing. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on this bill or the language of the bill.
Okay, Representative Seaball. Gotcha.
Representative Smith, thank you for bringing this bill. I, like my colleague, I'm a business executive that hires a number of women. I'm a father of 5, so my wife has been pregnant, and in that situation, I just want to make sure that this bill does not handcuff business owners through some of these unreasonable accommodations. And if you can, just clarify on line 50, if I offer a pregnant woman an accommodation and she refuses to take that, is that an unreasonable, is that an unfair employment practice?
What we have seen is that the accommodation that most employers are requiring employees to take is to take unpaid leave. And employees don't want to have to be forced to take unpaid leave in order to have a reasonable accommodation. So what this would do is not require those people to go out without being paid because the employer is saying that that's the only reasonable accommodation. If you provide one that is reasonable, there's an interactive process that's required, and that interactive process would allow for a reasonable accommodation to work. Now, you'd have also the undue hardship side of it. So if there was not a reasonable accommodation that would not cause a undue hardship, you'd be allowed to have the employee to take that accommodation. But it's meant to be an interactive process and one that allows for the employee to have what's best for the pregnancy and not necessarily what's best for the employer.
Okay, so I employ a number of women that require a hard physical requirement. And when they're pregnant, they cannot do that job. And we offer them a desk job, basically. And if they refuse to take that job, then we're okay.
If they well, it depends on the position. So if there is the ability to assist that person to do the manual labor, for example, once a day they have to lift something to above 25 pounds.
It's their whole job.
Well, so then they can't do their job. So they'd have to be able to do their job with or without a reasonable accommodation. So yes, providing them a desk job would be a reasonable accommodation.
All right, thank you.
Last one then, Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for providing us with those numbers. I think after hearing from Chairman Bonner, I think that, we certainly want to make sure that businesses are supported for doing what's right. But I think that, just merely instead of looking at all the stipulations that are expected of businesses, and maybe because this was drafted by, an attorney, the ignored clause on line 39 literally says, unless such employer can demonstrate that an undue hardship on its enterprise or business would result. So it still allows for the employer, should they be as respected as Representative Seaball's business, where he has, by his own admission, actually have provided an opportunity for pregnant women, much like Chairman Bonner in his own business, having actually making these sorts of gestures available to say that I respect the fact that you're pregnant, but you won't be able to be as productive if you come into work. They are already following the rules that this bill would actually seek to at least administer. The only thing, and I think if this is clear, all this is doing is for those 50 or so pregnant persons who feel confident enough to report that this is happening. This will actually help those businesses to understand that by and large in Georgia, we already have businesses that are well able and are doing the right thing by employees, but this just provides guardrails. Is that correct?
That is correct. And there are companies like these that are doing the right thing, but there are many companies out there that are not. And it's an unfair competitive advantage for them, and when we have companies that are doing the right thing. So this ensures that all companies are following the same guidelines, the same rules, as well as protecting the employees in the meantime.
Chairman Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have this, a part of the pitch is not only to protect the employees, but a workforce kind of component. Is that accurate? Have any of the entities like the Department of Economic Development or perhaps any of the chambers that exist throughout the state, have any of those weighed in on this?
I don't believe that there's been any opposition raised on this in any way.
Have they been presented with it? Do you know?
I believe they're aware. Yes, they have been presented. They're aware of it.
But no one there. For instance,
I have not personally spoken with anybody.
For instance, there, like in a previous bill, we've got a letter from the chamber specifically touting the economic benefits of that for business and economic development throughout the state. But what you're saying is we don't have that for this.
Do not have that for this, but I know there is another workplace bill that they've come out specifically against. So I think their silence here is maybe as supportive as we're going to get.
Chairman Petrie.
Thank you, Chairman, and I want to apologize first of all for being late. We've got a lot going on today, and I have a group of constituents at the freight depot, so I ran over here to get here, and thank you. And so to Chairman Smith, I apologize for that. I'm trying to catch up, studied on this a little bit last night. I do have some questions. Having been an employer for many years, I have some concerns. Yes. And so my experience, and there's always bad actors, I understand well, we would do anything to keep our employees, because if ever we need them, it's today. And so my experience was always whatever accommodation we need to make, we make, because we want to keep our folks with us, and that's ever increasingly a struggle. I understand well. I'm the father of a daughter and a son and grandchildren and all of that. Absolutely sympathetic to the cause, but I do have a concern. As it might be a undue burden on employers. So you mentioned the Fed, so we have federal law to protect against these kind of things. We do.
Reportedly,
And
yes.
so I want to emphasize that. I know that well, having done this for a long time. And you mentioned they dismiss 90% of cases, but I want to call your attention. I want to make a point about that. So we were always, in my opinion, a great employer. I had a lot of fine employees. They were my family. I loved them. We couldn't succeed without them. When I sold my businesses 4 years ago, as we negotiated that sale, I actually protected them by making sure we improved them and made sure they were protected with contracts going forward. They were important to us. Most employers are like that. There are a lot of bad employers. I get it. But here's what I wanted to say. Over those years, we had a lot of these kind of complaints as well. You're going to get them when you employ, 1,000 people. And you mentioned that 90% of them were dismissed. Well, my experience were almost all of ours were dismissed because most of them were frivolous. Now, that doesn't mean they're all frivolous. I'm sure there are plenty in society that are not. But my experience was that there were a lot of them were frivolous. And they should have been dismissed, and a lot of them were dismissed because they rightly needed to be dismissed. And so I'm concerned about really what I'm concerned about is just that we thoroughly and carefully vet this before we vote on it. That's what I'm concerned about. I don't know where I stand on it. To my friend, I love the noble cause and goal. Let's get there. But I don't know if this gets there in a way that having not, it needs to be thoroughly vetted. So I guess I'm rambling now. But that was my point, was to say, oftentimes isn't it true that not everyone who calls you is being accurate or honest or is seeing it the right way?
Absolutely.
According to the law?
My guess is that the 90% that you're speaking of is at the EEOC rather than in federal court. And yes, the EEOC dismisses the vast majority of it, and the vast majority, only 3% of people who call us do we even proceed forward with cases in. So it's not that there aren't a lot of people who have claims that are not warranted or that might be, as you call it, frivolous. It's that those warranted claims are getting into court by lawyers who know what they're doing, getting all the way to summary judgment and being dismissed by the court. And I think those examples that I provided, and I can provide dozens more, can show what I'm talking about. It's not the frivolous cases we're talking about. But this bill actually goes a little bit further because it protects employees in pregnancy in a way that the federal law does not. Most important, I think, is the statute of limitations, because in federal court, you have to file with the EEOC, a government agency, within 180 days of the act. What that means is that while people are pregnant, they're going to either have to go file and spend their time in litigation instead of taking the time to take care of their children, or when they've just had their baby at a time when it's so important to bond with their children, they're going to have to spend that time in litigation. And so that's not a choice that really a woman should have to make, and not a choice that a woman would want to make. And that means employers are getting away with it because the time limit is not there to allow them to go forward.
Representative Kennard. I'm sorry, Leader Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it not true that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce announced support for the Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act because it established clear guidelines and a balanced process that may help reduce potentially frivolous claims?
Yes, and what we find and what we have seen in the laws that have already passed is that when new laws are passed, that their litigation is either the same or has been lowered. And that's also true in Georgia. We passed a sexual harassment in the government employee last year bill and for retaliation, and there has been no litigation under that.
From a just quantifiable numbers perspective, is it not true that Georgia has the second highest maternal mortality rate, and that the Ohio State University found that women experiencing financial hardship during pregnancy are more likely to deliver babies with a lower birth rate, in which, because 80% of pregnancy-related deaths are preventable, that this bill would otherwise help, again, balance both the interests of employers and employees?
That's absolutely true. And we are one of the, we have an issue in Georgia with preterm, and this would actually allow people to be able to be taken care of, to be able to allow their children to come to full term, and it would allow more women to come into the workforce.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Seaball.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to table this. I think we need more time to, I need more time to digest this and figure out the effect on business owners.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? All right, is there a discussion? Okay. We're going to do a couple. Representative Carter.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'm a little flabbergasted that we just passed a bill out of here with like huge questions that didn't get answered. And as a woman who gave birth to 3 children, and understanding what pregnant women go through and the emotional, I'm just really concerned that we're focused on are not focused on the health and the care of the pregnant woman. And at some point in Georgia, we really should be more focused on Georgians. And that's all I'm gonna say for now. But I would love if we would go on and move this bill forward, because I think that the data is here, the information is here, and we've had way more questions answered on this bill than we did the previous one that we just passed out.
I understand, and I allowed Leader Park a motion to table, which always takes precedence over any other motion. So I am following the rules. Representative Lisa Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, as a mother who's been pregnant 3 times and thankfully have 2 adult children now that resulted from those, I support your bill. I do still have a few questions I'd like to work out. I want to be fully supportive of pregnant mothers, absolutely. And my heart breaks when I hear about the story that happened with your mother. But I do, like some others, want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of how it impacts business owners, particularly our very small business owners. It's hard for them to absorb costs and employee issues of all kinds than it is for much larger companies. And so that's really my only concern here. Otherwise, I love the bill, and I think it's a great bill. I feel like we might need a little bit more time just to talk through some of those things. So I just want to make sure you knew that I appreciate you bringing this bill, and I want you to know why I feel the way I do about potentially tabling it for now.
Yeah, and I'm going to make a comment, and then we're going to take a vote. This committee, for those of you who have been on here, we pass out very few bills. Last year it was 2. Year before it was 3. I've doubled that this year. We've done 4. And the reason for that is this committee, we probably one of the most educated across the board committees. I always brag on y'all. We thoroughly vet this, and most bills will take multiple hearings, and I'm sorry for the time constraints. And so we do have a motion to table in a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. All right. So the motion to table has failed. I'm going to come back to Chairman Petrie. You had your light on.
Mr. Chairman, I had it on earlier. I was going to just speak to the representative down here to let her know. We've already taken the vote now. But my point was to say, as someone who has, since I got here, in health appropriations in every committee I've been on, focused on doing anything we can for maternal mortality to improve what we're doing this year in health appropriations. This is not about that. This is about whether, as a body, we should be diligent on a bill we saw yesterday, and whether we should, quite frankly, this is a bill, in my opinion, that should be heard first and then voted on later. And that's what we're talking about, is doing our due diligence, studying a bill. There's nobody here opposed to the cause, as I said earlier. It's about doing it right and not stepping in a hole. That is why I supported flooring this, putting this, taking this off the table for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, who's number? Representative Carter.
Oh, at the appropriate time, I'd like to motion do pass.
You can make that motion.
I'd like to move that we do pass this bill out of committee.
All right, that's House Bill 501 LC 3655550. Nope, that is not.
5494.
All right. Motion to do pass House Bill 556 LC 365494. Is there a second? All right. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those opposed, raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you're on the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Hey, Barry, they passed that amended? Did they pass Gullett's amended? Hey, thank you. Appreciate you. Yes. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate you.